What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses goes head-to-head with the most controversial host on daytime television? You won't believe what unfolds when Julia Roberts sits down with the View panel and everything spirals completely out of control. This isn't your typical celebrity interview. This is a full-blown confrontation that left the studio audience in stunned silence and producers scrambling behind the scenes. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds when America's sweetheart transforms into a fierce defender of her beliefs against Joy Behar's relentless attacks. The tension was palpable from the moment Julia Roberts walked onto the View set. What was supposed to be a light promotional appearance for her latest film quickly devolved into one of the most explosive confrontations in the show's history. The audience had no idea they were about to witness a career-defining moment that would leave everyone talking. It started innocently enough. Julia Roberts, radiant in a flowing emerald dress, settled into the guest chair with her trademark smile. The initial pleasantries felt forced, with an undercurrent of something brewing. Beneath the surface, Whoopi Goldberg attempted to steer the conversation toward Roberts' upcoming projects, but Joy Behar had other plans entirely. "Julia, we're so excited to have you here," Whoopi began, her voice carrying that familiar warmth. "Tell us about your new film and what drew you to this particular role." Roberts shifted slightly in her chair, her media-trained composure intact, but her eyes scanning the panel with noticeable wariness. "Thank you for having me. The film explores themes of social justice and standing up for what's right, which feels incredibly relevant right now." Joy Behar leaned forward, her expression already sharpening. "Speaking of standing up for what's right, Julia, I have to ask about your recent social media posts. You've been very vocal about certain political issues, and frankly, some of your positions have been quite controversial." The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. Robert's smile faltered for just a moment before she composed herself. "I believe in using my platform responsibly, Joy. When I see injustice, I feel compelled to speak out." "Responsibly?" Joy's voice dripped with skepticism. "Is it responsible to promote conspiracy theories and misinformation to your millions of followers?" Sarah Haynes looked uncomfortable, glancing between her co-hosts as if hoping someone would intervene. Sunny Hostin maintained her poker face, but her hands were clasped tightly on the table. The audience began to murmur, sensing the confrontation building. Roberts straightened in her chair, her famous warmth replaced by steely determination. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, Joy, but I stand behind everything I've posted. I research my positions thoroughly and speak from my heart and conscience." "Your heart and conscience." Joy's laugh was harsh and dismissive. "Julia, you shared a post last week that was completely debunked by fact-checkers within hours. You're spreading dangerous misinformation to vulnerable people who look up to you." The camera zoomed in on Robert's face, capturing the moment her diplomatic facade began to crack. Her jaw tightened imperceptibly, and her hands gripped the armrests of her chair. "I shared information from what I believed to be credible sources. If there was an error, it wasn't intentional. Intent doesn't matter when you have that much influence." Joy pressed on, her voice rising. "You have a responsibility to verify information before you blast it out to millions of people. Lives are at stake here." Whoopi attempted to interject. "Maybe we should." "No, Whoopi, this is important." Joy cut her off sharply. "Julia, you've also been very critical of certain policies that are actually helping people. Your privilege is showing when you attack programs designed to help those less fortunate." The audience gasped audibly. Robert's eyes flashed with anger, and for the first time, her composed mask slipped completely. "My privilege? Joy, you don't know the first thing about my life or my experiences. I've worked hard for everything I have, and I've used my success to help others whenever possible. Have you, though?" Joy's tone turned mocking. "Because from where I sit, it looks like you've been using your platform to push an agenda that hurts the very people you claim to care about." The other hosts exchanged worried glances. This was spiraling beyond normal television discourse into something much more personal and volatile. Roberts leaned forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that the microphones barely picked up. "I won't sit here and be lectured by someone who's made a career out of tearing people down. You want to talk about responsibility? Let's." Talk about your responsibility to treat guests with basic human decency. The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Even the production crew seemed frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let the confrontation play out for the cameras. Joy's eyes narrowed, and she leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smirk. Oh, here we go. The real Julia Roberts is coming out now. Not so sweet and charming when someone challenges your dangerous rhetoric, are you? Roberts stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a sound that echoed through the silent studio. The camera operators scrambled to adjust their angles, and producers behind the scenes began frantically gesturing to their crew. Dangerous rhetoric. Roberts' voice was shaking with barely controlled fury. You want to see dangerous? Look in the mirror, Joy. You've built your entire career on divisiveness and hate. You tear down anyone who doesn't conform to your narrow worldview. The other hosts sat in stunned silence, watching as their carefully orchestrated show descended into chaos. Whoopi made another attempt to regain control, but it was too late. The confrontation had reached a point of no return, and everyone in the studio knew it. Joy stood up as well, matching Robert's aggressive posture. At least I'm honest about who I am. You hide behind that America's sweetheart image while spreading poison to your followers. You're a hypocrite, Julia. The word hung in the air like a slap. Robert's face flushed red with anger, and her hands trembled slightly as she processed the direct attack on her character. The audience held its collective breath, waiting to see how Hollywood's Golden Girl would respond to being called out so brutally on national television. But what happened next would shock everyone in that studio and leave viewers at home questioning everything they thought they knew about their favorite actress. Roberts took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as she stared directly into Joy's eyes. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before she spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right about one thing. I am going to show you who I really am. Her voice was steady now, controlled, but there was something dangerous lurking beneath the surface. I'm someone who refuses to be bullied by a bitter woman who's forgotten what journalism actually means. The audience gasped collectively. This wasn't the Julia Roberts they knew from romantic comedies and red carpets. This was someone fighting back with everything she had, and Joy Behar was about to find out she'd picked the wrong target. Joy's smirk faltered slightly, but she pressed on, clearly not expecting Roberts to fight back so directly. Bitter? I'm passionate about truth and accountability, something you clearly know nothing about. Truth. Roberts laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let's talk about truth, Joy. The truth is that you've spent the last 20 minutes attacking me personally instead of engaging with any actual issues. The truth is that you're more interested in creating drama than having meaningful conversations. Sunny Hostin finally found her voice, attempting to mediate. Ladies, perhaps we should take a step back and— No, Sunny. Roberts cut her off, her eyes never leaving Joy's face. I'm done stepping back. I'm done being polite while someone questions my character and my integrity on national television. The production crew was in full panic mode behind the cameras. Producers were making frantic hand signals, but the confrontation had taken on a life of its own. The audience sat transfixed, watching their daytime television transform into something unprecedented. Joy crossed her arms, doubling down on her aggressive stance. Your integrity? Julia, you've been spreading conspiracy theories and misinformation for months. You've aligned yourself with dangerous people pushing dangerous agendas. How is calling that out an attack on your character? Because you're not calling anything out, Roberts shot back, her voice rising. You're assassinating my character based on your own biased interpretation of my posts. You haven't presented a single fact or asked a single genuine question. You've just launched into a personal attack disguised as journalism. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Camera operators continued filming, knowing they were capturing something that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Whoopi made another desperate attempt to regain control of her show. Let's all take a breath here, Whoopi said, her voice strained. This is getting too heated. Too heated? Roberts whirled around to face Whoopi, her anger now directed at the entire panel. This is exactly what your show has become, Whoopi. A platform for character assassination and public shaming. You invite guests on under false pretenses and then ambush them. Joy stood up straighter, her voice dripping with condescension. Nobody ambushed you, Julia. These are legitimate questions about your public statements and actions. If you can't handle being held accountable for your words, maybe you shouldn't be posting them. Held accountable. Robert's voice cracked with incredulity. You mean publicly humiliated? There's a difference between accountability and what you're doing right now. You're not holding me accountable. You're trying to destroy me because I don't fit into your narrow political box. The audience began to murmur more loudly, some people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This had gone far beyond typical daytime television drama. They were witnessing a complete breakdown of civility, and nobody knew how to stop it. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Maybe we should go to commercial, she suggested weakly. No, Joy said firmly, her eyes blazing with determination. Julia wants to talk about truth? Let's talk about the truth of her recent posts supporting movements that have been linked to violence and extremism. Let's talk about her silence on issues that actually matter to marginalized communities. Robert's face turned red with fury. My silence? You don't know what you're talking about. I've been supporting causes and organizations for decades, long before it was trendy to do so on social media. I've donated millions of dollars and countless hours to helping people, but that doesn't fit your narrative, does it? Actions speak louder than words, Julia, Joy retorted. And your recent actions have been speaking very loudly about who you really are. My recent actions? Robert's voice was shaking with rage now. You mean my recent posts questioning certain policies and narratives? My attempts to encourage people to think critically about what they're being told? That's what's got you so upset, isn't it? That I'm not falling in line with your agenda? The studio was electric with tension. Every person in the room could feel the confrontation spiraling completely out of control. The other hosts looked helpless, watching their colleague and their guest tear each other apart on live television. Joy leaned forward, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. My agenda is truth, Julia. My agenda is protecting democracy and holding people like you accountable when you use your platform irresponsibly. Your agenda seems to be sowing division and confusion. Sowing division? Roberts laughed bitterly. Look around you, Joy. Look at what you've created here. You've turned what should have been a friendly interview into a public execution. You've made it impossible for anyone to have a civil conversation about important issues. You are the division. The camera captured every micro-expression, every gesture, every moment of this unprecedented confrontation. The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to applaud, boo, or simply flee the studio. This was unlike anything they'd ever witnessed on daytime television. Whoopi made one final desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Ladies, I think we need to. No, Whoopi, Roberts said, her voice eerily calm now. I think Joy needs to hear this. You've built your career on being the attack dog, haven't you, Joy? You pride yourself on being the one who asks the tough questions and holds people accountable. But what you really do is ambush people and tear them down for entertainment. Joy's face was flushed with anger, but she maintained her aggressive stance. I ask the questions that need to be asked. I hold people accountable for their actions and their words. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Robert stared at Joy for a long moment, her chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. The entire studio held its breath, waiting to see how Hollywood's sweetheart would respond to being told she didn't belong in the public eye. But what Robert said next would cross a line that could never be uncrossed, turning this heated exchange into something that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. Robert stepped closer to the panel, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper that somehow carried more weight than any shout. You know what, Joy? You're right. I shouldn't be in the public eye. Neither should you. The studio went dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to stop moving as Roberts continued, her words measured and devastating. You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about your accountability. How many careers have you damaged with your attacks? How many people have you driven away from important conversations because you turn everything into a personal vendetta? You've made the show toxic, Joy. You've made daytime television toxic. Joy's face went pale, but she rallied quickly. I won't be lectured by someone who what? Roberts interrupted, her voice rising to a roar that echoed through the studio. Who dares to disagree with you? Who refuses to be intimidated by your bullying tactics? You can't handle anyone who doesn't bow down to your authority, can you? The audience was completely riveted now, watching this unprecedented dismantling of everything they thought they knew about daytime television civility. Whoopi looked desperately at the producers, but they were all transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them. I'm not a bully, Joy protested, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. I'm holding you accountable for. For what? Roberts demanded, moving even closer to the panel. For having opinions that differ from yours? For questioning narratives that you've decided are untouchable? For refusing to be silenced by someone who's forgotten what real journalism looks like? The confrontation had reached a fever pitch. Roberts was no longer the diplomatic actress trying to promote her film. She had transformed into something fierce and uncompromising, and Joy was clearly unprepared for this level of resistance. Real journalism. Joy's voice cracked slightly. You don't get to define what real journalism is. You're an actress, not a journalist. And you're a talk show host, not a judge and jury. Roberts shot back immediately. But that hasn't stopped you from appointing yourself as the moral authority on everything. You've turned this show into your personal tribunal where you get to decide who's worthy of respect and who deserves to be destroyed. Sunny Hostin attempted to interject again, her voice shaking. Perhaps we should all take a moment to, no, more moments, Roberts said firmly, turning to address the entire panel. No more diplomatic solutions. This is exactly what's wrong with public discourse today. People like Joy have made it impossible to have honest conversations about important issues because they weaponized disagreement. The studio audience was on the edge of their seats, witnessing something they'd never seen before. This wasn't scripted drama or manufactured controversy. This was raw, unfiltered confrontation between two powerful women who had reached their breaking point. Joy stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. You're completely out of line, Julia. You're attacking me personally because you can't defend your positions. I'm attacking you. Roberts laughed incredulously. You've spent the last 30 minutes attacking my character, my integrity, my right to have opinions, and my place in the public eye. But the moment I fight back, suddenly I'm the one who's out of line. The hypocrisy hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everyone in the studio could see it, could feel it. The audience began to murmur, and for the first time, some people started applauding Roberts' words. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Roberts continued, gesturing toward the audience's reaction. People are tired of being told they can't question certain narratives. They're tired of being attacked for having different perspectives. They're tired of shows like this that pretend to promote dialogue while actually shutting it down. Joy's face was red with anger and embarrassment. You don't speak for people. You speak for yourself and your privileged bubble. My privileged bubble. Robert's voice was filled with contempt. You've been sitting in this studio for years, completely insulated from the real world, telling people what to think and how to feel. You've never had to worry about the consequences of your words because you've been protected by your platform. But I've been out there, Joy. I've been talking to real people, listening to their concerns, trying to understand their perspectives. The other hosts sat in stunned silence, watching their colleague being systematically dismantled by someone they'd underestimated. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, while Whoopi appeared to be calculating how much damage control would be needed after this aired. You've been talking to conspiracy theorists and extremists, Joy shot back desperately. You've been amplifying dangerous voices that disagree with you, Roberts finished. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You can't stand that I'm not falling in line with your approved narratives. You can't stand that I'm asking questions you don't want asked. The confrontation had moved beyond personal attacks into something much deeper and more significant. Roberts was challenging the entire premise of the show, the entire structure of mainstream media discourse, and Joy was crumbling under the pressure. I'm done with this, Joy said, her voice shaking with rage. I'm done with your accusations and your conspiracy theories and your complete disrespect for— No, Joy. Roberts interrupted, her voice calm but deadly. I'm done. I'm done with being ambushed on shows like this. I'm done with being lectured by people who've forgotten what real conversation looks like. I'm done with pretending that what you do here is journalism when it's really just character assassination disguised as accountability. The studio fell completely silent. Roberts looked around at the panel at the audience, at the cameras, taking in the moment before delivering her final blow. You want to know what's dangerous, Joy? What's dangerous is a media landscape where people like you get to decide who's allowed to speak and what they're allowed to say. What's dangerous is turning every conversation into a personal attack. What's dangerous is exactly what you've done here today. Roberts reached for her purse, her movements deliberate and dignified despite the chaos around her. I came here to talk about my film, to have a conversation about art and storytelling. Instead, I was ambushed by someone who's more interested in destroying people than understanding them. Joy made one last desperate attempt to salvage her position. You can't just walk away from accountability, Julia. You can't just watch me, Roberts said simply, walking toward the exit. And Joy, next time you want to hold someone accountable, try looking in the mirror first. The studio erupted as Roberts strode confidently toward the stage exit, her head held high, her dignity intact despite the brutal confrontation. The audience was on their feet, some applauding, others shouting, all of them witnessing something unprecedented in daytime television history. Whoopi scrambled to regain control, calling for commercial breaks and trying to calm the chaos, but it was too late. The damage was done. Joy sat slumped in her chair, looking shell-shocked and defeated, while the other hosts struggled to process what they'd just witnessed. As Roberts disappeared through the stage exit, the studio continued to buzz with energy and confusion. The audience slowly began to settle, but the impact of what they'd just seen would linger long after the cameras stopped rolling. The confrontation was over, but the reverberations would continue for weeks to come, changing forever how people viewed both the show and the woman who had just walked away from it all.